So the title is wrong, but tonight I'm going to try to cover some of the items involved with folders. We're going to be talking about organizing and managing your data more. Nothing super sexy tonight, but very handy nonetheless. And we'll be talking about some of the things that you can do with folders, bulk operations, and changing the attributes, profiles, travel plans, which are something that is fairly new and I think is very cool and has changed the way I am mapping some of my trips, but it is a pro-only feature. We'll take a quick look at import-export. There's really not much there. Your data, which is where all your stuff is stored, and we'll talk about the map info and sharing your maps as well. And there's a few other odds and ends we may look at if we have time. So let's go over here, and you can go crazy with folders. This is a kind of a non-SOTA map I've got here. This is all of the trails in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. They've got a hiking challenge called the Smoky Mountains 900 if you've hiked all the trails. And so this is just to give you an idea of, you can create folders to move your data into. Items within the folders are sorted alphabetically or numerically. And like in this case for the AT, where there's so many sections of it, I definitely recommend, starting out with a 0, 1 so that things sort as you expect. And when you change things, they don't immediately resort, but if you refresh the web page, then they will go back to the order that you were hoping that they would be in alphabetically. Taking another look at folders, if you don't have anything selected, you can see that they will kind of collapse in on themselves. And previously, I told you that this would zoom to like the contents of your map. I found this out about a half hour ago, and it is a super handy feature. This was something I was going to kind of ask as a feature request, that if I wanted to zoom in on just an area, can you add that? I now know that will zoom to what is visible on your map. And so like in this case, I've selected just this series of trails in a loop. And so if I click on this guy, it's going to zoom just to that data that is on the map, not the entire map. Once again, this is kind of a scratch sheet I've got for trips in the Smokies. And so I actually downloaded a GPX that had all the campsites and shelters within the park. And so once again, if I click on that guy, it's going to zoom out to show me the extent of what's visible. So that's, I think, a very cool hidden feature that you can kind of take advantage of. One thing I didn't mention, when you add markers to a map, it will kind of remember what you last set it as. And so like if I set a style for a marker, like a campsite, actually, let's go back over to this guy. So here I've got a map, and I want to add a marker, and I'm going to choose the shelter icon, and I'll say that's Spence Field. if I could type. And a lot of times when I add a marker, I don't worry about the exact coordinates when I'm doing it because I know I'm going to drag it around. And so I will add that. And then you can see over here, I'd already created a folder for campsites and shelters. And so I could go ahead and say that I want to put it into that folder. Now, when I do another marker, it's going to remember the style, the color, and the folder. And so now I can just go up here and say, oh, this is Russell Field. And I will move that in the general area of that. So that's a handy feature. So like in this particular map that I have, I've got folders for summits that are, that I can activate for completes, summits that may be rarely activated or unactivated summits, or just uniques for me that I haven't activated. I kind of did these as a group so that they would all automatically end up in, the completes folder. When I picked out the uniques, I did those all in one lump sum and added them so that they were all in a group. There is another way to deal with managing data like that. And each folder has something called bulk operations. Bulk ops give you the opportunity to work with all the contents of a folder. And one of the things that you can do is, like if I select, several of these, I can change the attributes. So I could go in and I could change the folder. Like I want to move those to the summits folder. And I don't know why they won't let you change the color. You could change the icon if you wanted to. And now when I do that, those guys have bumped up there. Another thing that you can do with bulk ops, which is pretty cool, is if I select a couple of guys there. And another note is a lot of times I'll do like alternative routes for a day. I may do A or B. In this case, I guess I deleted the B option and came up with a C option. All the normal selection options, if you click on the first item and then shift click on the next one, and then you can control on a Windows or command shift on a Mac to select random things. This is something else I reported today. This used to not be a typo. I don't know if y'all can see that clearly. That should be relative. So that'll probably be fixed tomorrow. But you can tell it you want to view kind of a comparison elevation profile, which is nice on a trip. Let me get back out. This is, a 4-day trip that we did. And so the first day's in red. So you can see that the first day we climbed. And then really for, the next 2 days, we pretty much stayed at an elevation over 4,000 feet until the last day when we made a very long, slow descent out to 20-mile ranger station. You can also do, I don't find this very useful, but you can do a relative profile, which is just going to give you, not the actual that just gives you an idea that, yeah, that first day was a lot tougher than the next 2 days were going to be. If y'all have been playing around any, you may have noticed on a line object, they now have this thing called the travel time. And this is to try to give you some estimate of how long it's going to take to travel that distance in several different modes. That's available to anybody. And then there's something called the travel plan, which gives you a few more options. These are all based on something that a Swiss Alpine guide came up with on calculating time. So it's probably not very accurate for normal human beings. But in the pro version and the travel plan, you can tweak it somewhat. And the idea is that you divide the distance and the elevation gain and loss. You assign those units. 1 kilometer is 1 unit, and 100 meters of gain or loss are a unit. And so you add that up for your entire trip, and then you divide it by some number, and that will give you your travel time. Now, when I go to the travel plan, the default numbers are 4 for climbing. This is for hiking mode. 4 up, 6 on a flat, and 6 down. Well, I don't go down faster than I go up, and so my down is going to be a 4. But what I can do is I can go to custom, and then I can change that to a 4. And you basically have to go on a couple hikes that on any given day that you're up to your par or whatever you want to say, and figure out what these units are. But you can also come in here and change it for whether it's a bushwhack, or I don't think many of us have to worry about ski touring around here. But I used to, so like this particular route, I used to do all my things as like individual legs. And so, I would have gone from the start of the hike all the way up to Thunderhead Mountain, which is a SOTA summit. And then I would have had another track that would have gone from Thunderhead down to the shelter at Spence Field, so that I had, in my GPS, so to speak, that, I was going to be hiking a 6.87 mile section, and I knew what the elevation gain was. But what the travel plan also gives you, and this is why I redrew this route all the way, so that's like the entire first day. If you put a marker on that line, and in the comments, put in a time, when you look at the travel plan, it throws that in there as a break and calculates it. And that gives you a good way of estimating, what your total time will be. So if you're on a hike that has more than one summit and you're trying to figure out, oops, didn't mean to do that. And you're trying to figure out how long it's actually going to take you over the course of a day, you can kind of figure that out, which I think is super, super handy. So like on the third day, we actually did 2 summits between Russell Field and Campsite 13. And so if I look at the travel plan for that, see, I had allotted an hour and a half and an hour. And so, that gives you your total time for your activations and your hiking, which I think is a pretty cool feature.
Now, Pat, the travel plan that's only available in the Pro edition?
That's correct.
Okay.
And I think I may have said this, or may not have. I think it would be a awesome idea if they could add, instead of having this custom option here, I'm going to request that maybe in your settings that you can set your own variables for the different modes. Like I said, I know I'm a 4 or maybe even a 3 going downhill sometimes. It's weird. I'm fine on the up, their up estimate from my testing, but I know I'm never faster coming down. I know I'm odd, but that's just the way it works for me. But it would be super nice if you could set those kind of defaults once you figure them out and didn't have to fiddle with this, because then you could, look at stuff. You use these guys to, oh, is it on a trail or is it a bushwhack, to figure stuff out. And nice thing too on the bulk ops is, so that was the way we actually went. I could do a travel plan for all 4 days, and it gives you a nice little rundown for all your days. So that, I think, is a very cool feature. Import and export. I think the most likely thing that's going to happen for importing is if you're pulling something from SOTA Atlas or someplace like that. So let's say I'm going to download this track from Mount Rogers, and then I can import. They have this GPS IO. I don't think that works with most modern GPSs, but if you have GPS Babel installed, you can actually directly communicate with a handheld GPS unit. I think older handheld GPS units. You can select, obviously this is nothing very fancy, but it's an easy way. And like I said, even if I've been someplace, I'll often, just import a track just so that I can get elevation profile. And I don't know if this is new or not, or if I just noticed it. It used to give you the elevation at the current mileage, but I don't remember it giving you the actual elevation gain and loss. I just noticed that recently up to that point, that you're out on the line. which I think is pretty nice too. Export for the folks that actually are using GPS units after you've drawn a track, that's probably what you're going to do. You can do it in several different formats. JSON, which is just a markup language. And I would say that's kind of the native format that CalTopo must be storing their data in. And one of the benefits of exporting it as JSON, if you import it back into CalTopo, it won't remember, I don't think it remembers the names of your folders, but it will keep your folders as they are listed here with their contents. If you choose like GPX, which is what your GPS units use, it will export all this stuff. And if you imported it back, you would just get a markers and a lines and polygons folder, the default ones that you start out with. But you can, you know, pick and choose which ones you want. So like a good example here, all these W2 summits. These are all ones that I don't think there's no way I can do half of these for the camp out this summer. See if that's doesn't really matter. And so I could export those. And I could go to a new map, and then I could import all those guys. And of course, it wants me to save it. And so there's a lot of the summits that are right around the New York camp out this summer. You also have the option, if you wanted to kind of start over, you could copy all to a new map. Obviously, a lot of people like to look at stuff in Google Earth, and so you can export as the KML, which is kind of the Google Earth native language.
So you can only copy to a new map, not to an existing map, correct?
Correct. And yeah, I know we had that conversation, right. And you know, that seems like another great feature request for CalTopo, that it would be nice to say, oh, I want to add this to, you know, or 5 of these to another map. That has not been a problem in my workflow so far, but obviously that would be a handy feature to have.
Can you not just export whatever you want to copy over and then go open up the, you know, the map you want to import them to and do an import? I mean, it's just.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, no, you could. It's just, you know, like maybe you've got an existing map that you want to add some other stuff to. Right. It would be nice that you didn't have to
do an export import. It'd be nice if you could do like a copy to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But you know, at the end of the day, it's a web application, so it's going to have some limitations. It's not an operating system that has a clipboard that you can copy and paste stuff on. So I do get it, but it would be handy.
I have found, at least on the GPX imports, it's real easy on my mobile devices, on my iPhones and iPads, to basically copy from Gaia or my Garmin InReach app or whatever, I can basically do an export to CalTopo and it'll just copy that trail or whatever I'm trying to send over to CalTopo just real easily. And then I can stick it in the, SOTA, in my SOTA folder. And I find it easier to do it there than on the PC. Just because I'm used to doing it there.
Yeah. And, it's funny, I used to favor actual tracks that were downloaded from my GPS unit that I would upload to, the SOTA mapping or SOTA Atlas. But a lot of those I feel are a little too busy, because they have those little deviations where you've gone over in the woods to water the tree and, where you stop to tie your shoe or get your water out of your pack.
Right.
And so a lot of times I'll take a GPS track and I use my watch now, my Garmin watch, for recording tracks usually. Although I probably should be using CalTopo since we're talking about it. But it takes a whole lot of data points. And so it's a very, very busy GPS track. And there is a way to kind of smooth things out. You can, does it show it here? No, it doesn't. Where is that? Oh, under modify, sorry. Resample. And so you can go in there and say, oh, let's knock it down to, something every 100 feet. And that would smooth it out and get rid of some of the little jagged edges. But like I said, quite often I'll import a track and then I'll basically draw my own going over the top of it. That's just, to me, a little bit cleaner. And at the end of the day, GPS units are not that accurate. You can record a track going up and coming back down the exact same thing, exact same path, and it looks like you were 20, 50 feet in either direction. So it's still kind of a best guess type situation.
Yeah.
Now, we touched upon the map info early on, but once you save a map, this little icon here will give you some things which are beneficial. You can always select different map layers, and then when you go in here, you can tell it to update the map's default display to the layers that you currently have chosen. And that is really good, like when you're giving a map to someone else to look at, so that that they're seeing exactly what you're seeing and not whatever layer they might have had selected in CalTopo. Now, down here is where you can choose whether or not people can see your maps or what they can see. And some of that depends on your subscription level. If you have the free version, your maps have to be public, which once again, they're not exactly out there in plain view, as you saw in the last session. But by default, I think they're gonna, if you don't have the basic account, it will, I shouldn't say the free account, it will default to anybody that's got the maps URL. And so that's it right there. And you can always copy that and paste that in a text message or email and send it to somebody. That means they can look at your map. That doesn't mean that they can do anything with your map. They can't add anything. They can't edit anything. It's kind of like a hard copy map that they can look at. But you can go down here and create a shareable link, like if you're planning a trip with somebody, and you can choose two options that allow them some access. So update means that they can add information to your map. They can't change any of the stuff that you've put on the map already, but they could add notations or, you know, other tracks or features. Write gives them full access to edit stuff on your map. And you can create multiple versions of these links too. So here I've got one that's only good for updating and one that's good for writing. And that also generates a QR code that you could put out somewhere if you wanted to, that would give people easy access to it. That's all that's important there. So, next big thing is your data. And this is where everything that you've created is stored. And so obviously all the maps that you've created, which I've got a couple in here. I probably need to delete some of those. Bookmarks are where when somebody else gives you a link to a map, or if you find something, you know, in the shared CalTopo maps that you're interested in, you know, like say all sorts of stuff here. Let's see what we got here. Oh, Syntax 77's trip. That's interesting. That's a YouTuber. This is a trip that he had planned, and I can go on the little information thing and I can bookmark it. And now it's in my data under bookmarks. Maybe if I refresh. Oops, wrong button. Oh, there it is. Maybe it was there before. So that gives you an easy way to get back to data that somebody else has given you and you don't remember what the URL is or deleted it, etc. Whenever you produce a print in CalTopo, it keeps them for, I think, 7 days by default. And so if you ever want to go back and reprint something, you've got some recourse, and you could say, I want to keep that one forever and ever if you wanted to. And then if you open up the PDF, come on. Maybe it'll open. Oh, it's working. Let's look at something else. Your tracks are tracks that you recorded with the mobile app. These are not things that you've added to CalTopo or drawn. These are just simply things that came straight off the mobile app. And so you can open that up. It just gives you a very basic overlay as that. And then you can, you know, if you wanted to download it or something, those will show up on a map that you basically created them on. I guess this really is giving you an easy way to manage and delete them more than anything else. Let's see if that ever, nope. Your layers are where you've created layers. Obviously, these are the shaded relief layers that I created from the different compass points and azimuths that we looked at last time. That counties one is something I find very useful, but this feature is only available in the desktop version now, so I don't think anybody's interested in that. And then this is where if you downloaded a map sheet and told it to add it to your account, this is where it goes. This is also a place where if you had one of these maps from someplace, from a park or something like that, you could upload it if it was geo-referenced, and they could add that to the repository so that, you know, when you told it you wanted to stack a map sheet, it might be an option in the future. And you can even add your own icons. So if you might have noticed, I got a couple SOTA icons down here. So kind of funny, they do not have a good icon for a water source. And so that's another icon that I want to add, is like a water drop. And so when I'm planning a backpacking trip, I usually put this little shower head icon as my water source. That's as close as I could figure something decent. So that is all of your data. So let's look at a couple other little odds and ends if they do behave. Another cool little party trick is if you click on the map somewhere, one of the options is the simulated view. And this looks very similar to the, hey, what's that website? I mean, I would think that this is pretty much straight from using that website. But this will give you kind of that, if you've used Peak Finder on your phone, it'll give you an idea of what the mountains are out there from a particular viewpoint. And you've got a couple options here that are kind of interesting. You can view it with the topo map laid over it, or you can do kind of the Google Earth imagery, which is fairly realistic. I always like to know what the mountains are on the horizon when I'm looking out from a summit. Another thing that we didn't really talk about is this little measuring tool. It gives you a couple options here. You can kind of use the profile, and I recommend setting the snap to none for stuff like this. But like you can kind of use the profile tool as a poor man's line of sight tool, you know, so that yes, there's nothing in the way between those two summits. So that's probably good for a 2-meter summit to summit. You know, it's kind of a go, no go situation. It doesn't give you the details like the tool on the SOTA mapping project does, but if you're just looking for something quick and dirty, that works. And the best part is once you're done with it, boom, it disappears. It is kind of just a one-time use thing. You know, you can also just say, hey, how far is that? And it'll just give you that information. And that's all I've got for you tonight.
Cool, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
A lot of new stuff, little tiny things.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this is not the super fancy stuff, but oh, who said you have a sense of file size there? Was that in reference to the GPS stuff I was exporting? Evans? I mean, this is all basically text files that you're exporting, so it's all fairly small in terms of, oh, you're not seeing that. I'm sorry. So, yeah, everything that I downloaded when I was playing around is all hundreds of Ks. So, you know, all a GPX file is a text file. So all of that data is pretty small. And then similarly, JSON files are also just text files. So it's amazing that like these are all tracks that were listed. It's hard to believe that that's enough data to recreate those tracks, but it's in there. And I used the JSON, like when I was working on that giant map with all of the trails in the Smokies. I kind of used the JSON format as a backup of that. Just that took an incredible amount of time to add all those trail sections in there.
But Pat, if we wanted that whole section, that whole set of data, you could just export it and we could import it, right?
Yes. Like all that Smoky stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
And that was my intent, was when I started out on that, because I don't know that I will ever actually be able to complete all the trails, but where is
Was that stuff that already existed and you imported it and then made some modifications to it?
No, I actually drew those by hand.
Huh.
So Well, I mean, by hand in the sense that, you know, I use the snap to the open source, OpenStreetMap project, data. But there's a spreadsheet that's maintained for, completing this stuff. And the way it works so any intersection where there's one of the national park trail signs. And so like on Anthony Creek, am I sharing that?
Yeah.
I think I am.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like on the Anthony Creek Trail, there's a sign at the beginning at Cage Cove, and then there's one where it meets the Crib Gap Trail. And then there's one at the Russell Field Boat Mountain Trail intersection. So that's how they consider you have to hike from sign to sign in order to say that you've hiked it. And so, you know, often what I would do is I would take a trail, draw the entire trail, and then split it into sections.
Okay.
But yeah, like I said, it took me weeks to get all this stuff in here.
Like
Oh,
I
man.
know Forsyth County has every single trail on their website where you can download and import into CalTopo, and it has all the details, like every single little detail in there. It's amazing.
Yeah, and that's because they're using ArcGIS.
Yes, they are.
To maintain all their. Yeah, no, I mean that's a whole other level of mapping there.
Yeah.
I've supported researchers using ArcGIS for decades, so I'm quite familiar with that side of it as well.
Yeah, I didn't know if Smokey said something like that you just download and import, you know.
No, and it's like all the campsites. There's a website that has a wealth of data. I wish Zoom would get out of my way. And I think it started out as Tennessee Landforms, but there's all sorts of stuff in here. So I think this is like where I got all the GPX for all of the campsites and shelters and stuff. But you know, I just Googled Smoky Mountains campsites GPX, you know, and that's what I got. So there's all sorts of information out there on the internet.
Hey, Pat, how about a basic question on your
Sure.
last, on that last example you had where you clicked the measure the line feature?
Yep.
Sometimes when I click, so you measure a line and you use the existing line or you use the existing feature. Sometimes it misses the vertex and it shoots across, you know, like you,
So where's my maps?
Well, when he was done, he went and clicked the check mark, or you can just double click on your ending point and it will stop that.
So
that's
are
what
you,
asking.
Mike, are you talking about drawing a line in general or just measuring?
just measuring that line and you pick your what your snaps are going to be, whether they're on the line or on the OSM.
Right.
What I've noticed sometimes is that it'll miss one of those sharp curves and it'll go across the curve and give you a tangent line instead of following the line.
Oh, huh, interesting.
I just wonder, is there a rule of thumb, like how often you have to select a feature to keep on it?
No, now sometimes if you you do have to be careful sometimes. Normally if you select the highlighted line, it will continue along that. If you happen to get off of it, like that, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
Kind of.
it might be just a problem that I'm not carefully selecting the line, because yeah, every once in a while it jumps across one of those switchbacks and sort
Yeah,
of
and
truncates the line.
so what happens is if you accidentally clicked off of a line, off of one of the snap to lines, you have to go back and see how it highlighted that.
Yeah,
And now once I get on that, now it will follow that.
mhm.
But if you somehow happen to click off of it, it's going to lose that snap.
Yeah. Is there any way,
Um,
is there any way to adjust the size of that snap window so you don't have to be extra careful about hitting the line?
Well, so pretty much, and then obviously you can back up to where you didn't make a mistake,
Yeah.
which is what I do quite often. But quite literally, it's like I click on that, I see that I'm on the snap. I don't go to here and then go to here. I'm going to go straight to over here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to minimize the number of times I'm potentially going to make a mistake.
No, so maybe that's my solution. Just go from one end to the other and forget about trying to hit interim points.
Right. I mean, and that's the whole point of the snap is, you can go, kind of crazy and,
Okay.
it'll choose, I guess I don't know what algorithm it uses for choosing that, but whoops.
The shortest route, maybe.
Well, I mean, I can't imagine that it's picking the shortest route that quick.
I don't know.
So, but somehow, yeah. Probably should delete that. Yeah.
And I've got another basic question, Pat.
Yeah.
So I make my maps, and then I send a copy, part of my safety protocol, I send a copy of my planned route to my brother and my son, so they know where I am.
Yeah.
And I haven't found a way to highlight the line that I'm taking. I wind up drawing a second line along there. Is there a way to highlight an existing line just to show them which way I'm going?
So you're saying that you do not draw a line on the map already? You were just,
No, there's some existing trails on the map. And let's say there's a choice of two ways to get to the summit. In order to let them know which way I'm going, I would like to highlight the line that I'm following. And what I do now is I wind up drawing another line in a different color and showing them which way I'm going.
right. And so you aren't necessarily using that particular CalTopo map for your route planning, just as a way to give them an idea of what the trail you're on.
No, I use it for the map planning, and then when I'm done, I send them a copy. So if they have to find me, they know where I am.
So say,
There's a local one.
yep, that's why I picked it. So where are you going to park at? We're going to say.
Yeah, so let's say that you park down by Hessian Lake, but there's a couple of different ways that you can get up to Bear Mountain, up to Perkins Tower.
Right. And so
I
let's
like-
say that's the way that you've drawn. Now, if I want to I mean, yes, you're right that how are you going to distinguish that between other ones that are already on the map?
Yeah,
And so, I mean, I don't know that there's a perfect answer for that. You can make the line extra wide
Mhm.
so that it's a little bit bolder, or you can change the style so that it, you can say, hey, that's the way I'm going.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, that's a good idea. Use a different style rather than a different color. Yeah. Okay.
so yeah, just to make it somewhat different from what's already out there. And I think I've mentioned it before. I use, it's hard to find colors that stand out on different backgrounds. Like that green doesn't really show up very well, on this
Right.
particular background. So, I often will change between red and blue, which seem to be about the best. But then I like the dotted style that seems to be pretty distinctive too.
Mhm.
And that's not likely to be on, a map like the Bear Mountain State Park map.
Mhm.
So, yeah, you got to figure out how to use the tool that you got to try to do what you want.
Yeah, I just wondered if there was a command that I hadn't found to try to
No, I don't
highlight
think
them.
any way. Can't think of any way to. Oh, there is, and it would work for a short trail. And that's the buffer. And so I could say I want a buffer of 30 feet. And let's see if it actually works on this. And so that kind of gives you your highlight.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I don't know if I can change that after the fact. I don't think you can. So let's go back and delete that. I didn't think that would ever have a useful function. So let's just do 60 feet on either side. There you go.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, where there is a function for it, Pat, we discovered during the AT on the air back in 2000, whatever, 21.
Yep.
The POTA guys wanted to do a activation where they were on the AT, and they also want to know what SOTA peaks were along the AT that would qualify as a POTA and a SOTA. And if you read the POTA rules, you have to be within 100 feet of the trail.
Right.
So we were throwing some buffers in there to see if you could work it, within 100 feet of the trail. And then the Conservancy changed the opinion to say the trail would be anything in their easement area. So then we were playing games to see if we could get some SOTA summits to qualify as both a SOTA and a POTA at the same time.
Right. Well, that would have been handy, probably.